Hello, sir. Thank you once again for taking the time to have this chat with us. As so, just by way of introduction, my name is Tunde Bidakobe, co-founder and CEO of RecFile. We are happy to have you on this call, sir. And I guess we want to, as much as possible, ensure that our listeners get the benefit and the value of engaging with someone who has had such an illustrious career in the space. So, if you don't mind, sir, can you just introduce yourself and also kind of just share a bit about your background, sir?
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Buno Nduka, a Nigerian. I have worked maybe in 7 places, but started at the AML platform and did that for almost, we can say, 32 years now, but 22 in core AML. Actually, in 1992, I tried to leave the fast-moving consumer good industry and decided to join the banking industry because that was the attraction for young graduates then, and because we had what we call the new generation banks coming. So I joined a bank called Commerce Bank, and my initial training, I was posted to a department called O&M, Organization and Methods. And that department was responsible for designing policies of the banks, including how customers are onboarded and so on, designing procedures and so forth, and then also conducting site inspection of the various departments and branches of the bank to see their conformity and compliance with those policies and procedures. And from there, just within 6 months, I got another offer from a bank called Oceanic Bank to come and establish that same department in Oceanic. So I took the challenge and I joined Oceanic in November 1992 and then continued with that type of assignment, developed all the policies and procedures for the bank, and then went ahead and moved to their training school to begin to organize and conduct various type of training for the various levels, including from the management to the least staff of the bank. I did that till also end of October 2000, when an international organization called the West African Institute for Financial and Economic Management, WIFM, based in Lagos here, at the Central Bank of Nigeria Training Institute in Satellite, decided to engage me as one of their program managers. And behold, the first program I organized for the entire West Africa, which was the first week of November 2000, was on anti-money laundering.
Wow.
In collaboration with the U.S. Secret Service and the FinCEN, that is their own FIU. And from there, my eye opened more for issues relating to anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism. And after doing that till May 2009, I now got a job with GIABA, which is the Financial Action Task Force regional body for the entire West Africa, that has 15 members of ECOWAS and 2 non-ECOWAS members, Sao Tome and Principe and the Union of Comoros. And when I joined them, I was also the head of programs and projects. And then when directors were appointed, I was also appointed a director, the first director of GIABA, in charge of programs and projects, later renamed evaluation and compliance, and was where I retired just 2 years ago. I was involved in leading GIABA to carry out the first set of mutual evaluation of our member states, and then also the second set of mutual evaluation. We call it rounds of mutual evaluation, which is the process of examining our members to see level of compliance with international AML framework or standard. So that has been a very rewarding and exciting journey so far. And I must say that I'm still enjoying it till today as a consultant. Before I spoke with you, I have an assignment that GIZ, the German international organization, is trying to engage me by next week. So it shows that the sector is
Mm.
evolving and there are a lot of opportunities to actually tap in that area.
That's fantastic. I think
Yeah.
I guess if there's anybody then in the whole of West Africa that can understand really, I guess I'm trying to link this now to where we are in Nigeria currently on the I think it's common knowledge now Nigeria is on the FATF grey list.
Yeah.
And the grey listing is because certain issues, and I guess those issues are come around when you do the evaluation and all of that stuff. So I think if there's someone that is best placed to be able to explain to people how is it that we're on the grey list and what do we need to get off the grey list, I think it's that you are probably the best placed in West Africa for that. So my question, sir, is around your experience and in the mutual evaluations that you've done. I think you said you led the first one for all the member states, and you also the second one. What are the challenges? And I think you can be brought around West Africa, but I think maybe listeners in Nigeria might be more interested to understand what are the challenges that you see that are the most pressing one that we're seeing currently, and how have they evolved over time? And I guess linked to that, what can we do? Because obviously all of this links into the grey listing. So from your perspective, sir, how does all of that fit in, and what can you say on it, sir?
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me start by commending Nigeria, first of all, as a country that since actually I ventured into AML CFT, Nigeria has also been in that sector more than any country in our region, and that they have actually developed a lot of framework, both institutional and legal framework that can support a robust AML CFT regime. The thing we should be looking at is why have we gone? This is the third time Nigeria entered the grey list. The first time was 2005, 2006. It was then called non-cooperative countries and territory. Then the mutual evaluation of Nigeria has not been done, but because Nigeria fulfilled the criteria for the international community to actually bring on board a country into the what we call the ICROG process, that is International Cooperation Review Group of the FATF, because of the financial sector, the size that was above 5 billion US dollars. And then it was also envisaged that the level of corruption, the perception of corruption in Nigeria was also high. So all this propelled the international community to bring Nigeria into that process. Then, following the first mutual evaluation of Nigeria, then it was based on what we call the 40 plus 9 recommendations. And there were what we call the core recommendations then that every country must fulfill. And you must, as a country, be able to secure a very good rating on those recommendations. One of them was the recommendation on the legal framework criminalizing the full range of the predicate offenses of money laundering. Then the legal framework of Nigeria did not capture all the offenses, so
Hmm.
it was seen as a gap in the system. That also was a major gap. And then the issue of customer due diligence was also seen that CDD was also not robust enough to guide against the misuse of the financial sector, especially the banks then, and then before it was expanded to include other players in the financial sector. So all this also led to Nigeria being in that. But Nigeria happened to be the first two countries that established the financial intelligence unit within our region. Nigeria was a mentor to the remaining four countries, Anglophone countries in our region: Ghana, the Gambia, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. And that experience, they were able to also showcase that they have a lot. But however, during the second round of mutual evaluation, where also supervise it. And it happened that Nigerian Mutual Evaluation, the current one, was the only mutual evaluation throughout my 22 years that I read from the cover page to the back page, because I wanted to see what was happening, and
Yes, sir.
which was quite revealing that Nigeria has actually put in place certain things. But unfortunately, one of the challenges then, when that mutual evaluation was conducted in 2019, and then
Okay.
the COVID 2020 affected the discussion of the report. Will have to be discussed in August 2021 in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. One of the challenges then was also the issue of collaboration and coordination mechanism within the country, and then the use of people who were not experienced in mutual evaluation. Unfortunately, Nigeria had people who were well trained in mutual evaluation, and when we did our first mutual evaluation in the second round, which was for Ghana, we had three people from Nigeria that were our assessors.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, they were not fully utilized in their own assessment. So that provided a gap in terms of knowledge, in terms of response to assessors' questions, and provision of the relevant documents and the use of data. So that has been a major challenge. And then some sectors were also not fully developed. Uh, One of the issues that came on board in the second round is the issue of risk assessment. And when Nigeria did their first risk assessment, which was in 2015-2016, it was not all that comprehensive. Some sectors were not captured, like the MPO sector, the non-profit organizations,
Yes, sir.
was not captured. And then the issue of beneficial ownership was also not well addressed. So these were also major challenges. And then what we call the designated non-financial businesses and professions, like the legal profession, the casinos, and
Mm-hmm.
so on, were also not well addressed. So this also to make Nigeria kind of exposed to gaps that were recognized by the international body. And then
Yes.
again, the legal framework again, you see, in Financial Action Task Force standard, there are certain things you don't need to invent the wheel. If we say these are 21 predicate offenses, you take them and then domesticate it
Mm-hmm.
into your own national action. That was not well done then. And then the issue of the NFIU not also being independent was an issue before that particular process, uh, which was addressed later.
Yes,
And
sir.
this has been things that they needed to address. So these are challenges that led Nigeria into the ICRG process, that is the grade listing, with
Yes, sir.
about 84 items to address. And I'm happy that within a short while, that just between February 2023, last year, and now, Nigeria has almost addressed all these lapses with just a few remaining. That I hope that in the next February next year and October next year, Nigeria should be able to is the grey list process. So we just hope so that this
That
will happen.
that's fantastic, sir. And I think you're a repository of knowledge. A lot of these things, I like to think that I know a lot about the AML CFC, but a lot of these things I think is news to me. And so I think you mentioned, sir, that Nigeria. This isn't the first time Nigeria is being grey listed. You said it's happened
Yes,
three
this is
times
the
before.
third
I think
time. Yes,
you said in
yes,
2005 to 2006. At the time, it
yes.
wasn't called grey listing; it was called something else. So that happened, and then it was the second time 2019, or was it before? Was
No,
the so
second time was 2011, 2012.
Okay, sir. And then
Yes.
this
Then
2023 one is a
2023
reflection of the
now. Yes,
2019
the third time.
evaluation.
Yes, yes,
Okay, and I think a core feature of that you've mentioned, sir, in a lot of things that you've said. Number one, obviously, is the fact that is once you if you do get off the grey list, I think it's not that you can never get. It's something that is always a constant. You have to keep doing the things that will keep you off the gray list. So, I mean, I'm glad to hear that you say it's likely that hopefully in the next 1 year or so, Nigeria does get off the grey list. And so I guess looking to the future, I guess there's certain things that we'll need to be always on guard about to make sure that it doesn't reoccur, that we get back onto the grey list. So I would like
Yeah.
to get your thoughts on that, but also linked to that, a lot of the things that you communicated. I think you said that Nigeria has always had the expertise. I think some of it around the grey listing was maybe around allocation of resources, because we were almost our brother's keeper when we were doing evaluation. I think you mentioned we did evaluation for Ghana, and that you
Yeah.
had we had consultants who had the requisite skills and knowledge, but then when we were
Mm.
doing our own assessment, maybe they were not utilized as much as we as they should have been. But there were also
Yeah.
structural issues around independence of the FIU, and also some certain types of legislation that needed to be put in place. So I think I guess the question in all of that, sir, is two questions.
Yeah.
Number one, is what do you see as how do you see AML CFT kind of with the approach that the current leadership across these organizations have currently in Nigeria? How do you see it evolving over the next in the future? And how what are the things that, and I'm linking this to FIs now, so financial institutions and the MPOs, DNFPBs, what are the things that private sector can start to do to make sure that it's not just a task of the NFIUs, of the CBNs, of SEC? What are the things that people within the private sector, what can they start to do to make sure that we do get off the grey list, and then we get off the grey list for good, and it's not something that we relapse into, sir?
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Let me start by also saying that one of the requirements of the FATF standard is recommendation 2 that emphasizes issue of national, the what we call the 3 C's of AML CFT. That is collaboration, cooperation, and coordination. And that means within the competent authorities like FIU, EFCC, Central Bank, SEC, these are competent authorities, they collaborate among themselves. And then we also have private sector, public sector initiative, where these competent authorities will also engage with the people they are also supervising. And that will broaden the knowledge, because the uh, private sectors, which we call reporting entities, I must tell you, they are the ones that actually determine the pace, because they are the ones that is the first point of call of the criminals when you want to engage in money laundering. That the banks are the points where we have the first stage of money laundering, where we call it placement stage, that they go there. And if these people are not engaged well with the supervisors, then the supervisors may not know exactly what are the gaps in those systems, because these people are looking for profit, and therefore they may overlook certain things. So engagement between the private sector and public sector will help to remove that doubt that is a master-servant relationship. It should be a win-win process, that we are supervising you, we issue you the license, but we also need you to succeed by providing us information. So overall, there is also a FATF recommendation that emphasizes the issue of guidance and feedback, that central bank should be able to come up with regulations and so on, and then allow the reporting entities to operationalize this. And then if there are gaps there, they will be able to tell you that these are the challenges we are facing in undertaking the obligations you have set out in these regulations. The regulators will be able to look at it by sitting down with these operators and say, okay, what are these challenges? Why do you think? What do you think we can do to ensure that your system is not misused for the purpose of money laundering? And then they will agree, rather than imposing the regulations on them. So engagement is very key, and that is one area. And then capacity building is very important, that regular awareness creation, regular training of staff. I just came back from one bank this morning, and I was disappointed in the delivery of the services by the bank and to customers, that you see the bank getting crowded, asking mundane questions that would have been addressed if the staff were well trained. And you see customers even getting annoyed because of the way this. And that means that we need to do a lot of engagement, a lot of coordination, a lot of capacity building, a lot of awareness creation, and so on. Initially, some of the reporting entities, that is banks and so on, we also call them accountable institution, did not believe that money laundering issue was necessary because they felt it was actually weighing them down. And that is why some of them see compliance function as just something just to fulfill all righteousness.
A tick box
But
almost.
yes, but if they have been following what has been happening internationally, I'm sure you heard about the TD Bank in US
Yes, yes,
recently and the amount of sanction that was meted out to such bank.
yes,
If
sir.
you do that for any bank in Nigeria, I don't think that bank will survive. So, and that is very important that our banks, and that is the reporting entities in general, to also begin to look at their processes and operation to ensure that they are not misused. And the first point of call is for them to do robust risk assessment of their operation so that they will be able to guard against any form of misuse for money laundering and terrorist financing purposes.
Sir.
Yeah, sorry. One area they need to look at is the issue of technology. It is very important because looking at the volume of businesses they are doing, the number of accounts they are managing, it is very important for them to use very adaptable technology. It is not enough to say we have acquired technology. That technology does it address your needs.
Mhm.
It is not the level of sophistication that matters. It is whether it is able to give you what you intended to the outcome for, and that is where the effectiveness of AML CFT is being questioned. That are you delivering the intended result? So if your technology is not delivering the intended result, then it means there's a challenge. Some banks went into recently saying they are upgrading and so on. uh, it's becoming a challenge for me even to see they
Mhm.
track my own transaction. So if my account is being misused, then it means it is a challenge. Do you get it?
Yes, sir.
So these
Yes,
are
sir.
these are things that they need to look at. What kind of technology are they adopting and adapting to their
Mhm.
own operation? Are they
Yes, sir.
robust enough to ensure that they are able to capture the risk in their operation and
Yes, sir.
be able to avoid such risk? So this is very, very key that they must bring on board.
Yeah, thank you so much for mentioning that. And I think it links into an additional point I was going to ask you to share your opinion on. I think the importance of technology can't be overemphasized. I think it's and as you said, it's something that is important, but not just technology in and of itself. It's technology that meets the needs and actually
Yes.
solves the problem. So it's not just, oh, we
Yes.
have technology. It's, does the technology do the job that is required? And I want to link that
Yes.
to a something that I know that is a key part of one of the things that you've been passionate about is around financial inclusion. I know that you played a big role in, I guess, the development of microfinance institutions and how I think you did some work with the CBN around that. So if you don't mind, sir, can you just talk about your experience around microfinance institutions, but also specifically one of the challenges that those smaller, because it's all about financial inclusion, and so they're trying to provide financial services to the parts of the country that would not normally have access to it. And so for
Yes.
those types of institutions, they have challenges. And one of the challenges that we have also seen in the market is around adoption of technology. Some
Yes.
of them, there are challenges around maybe being able to afford the technology, but also
Yes.
some of them, there are challenges around being able to make sense of how do they integrate the technology to
Yes.
what they are, how they are supporting the individuals that where they're trying to drive financial inclusion. So how do you marry those two issues, and can you just kind of shed some light into the work that you did around the microfinance institutions in your very illustrious career?
I had the privilege of being a member of the team FITC. We are engaged to develop the certification program on microfinance. So I was the team lead for under my Director General, Dr. Isede. We went to Indonesia to learn their own framework. And from there, we came back and developed the regulation and the framework for the certification of at various the essence of this is to ensure that people who were not able to access financial services from the formal financial institutions were not left out. And that is the essence of financial inclusion, that broaden the base so that the formal sector will be able to capture almost everybody, and then see that the formalization of that process will help to push away criminals from misusing the informal sector. So on the basis of that, that certification program was developed, and then along the line, the various framework were also developed to see how the microfinance bank were now also, in terms of their base, some were national, some were regional, and so on, depending on their capital base, and then also depending on the structure they adopt. If they are adopting group lending, which was more approach of helping to reduce delinquency in terms of repayment process, and then also helping in the identification of the members. Then, but as the society grew and as our economy grew and as our businesses also begin to grow, individual lending came on board, and therefore the microfinance services also tailored it towards individual lending, and that also brought on board its own risk. And from the international community, especially the FATF standard, recommendation 1 deals with risk assessment and the application of what we call risk-based approach to operation. That it is not all your customers you should classify as in the same risk category. Some are to be seen as high risk, some are medium risk, some are low risk. Therefore, in developing your customer due diligence measures, you also have what we call the enhanced customer due diligence process. You have the normal and you have the simplified. And that is where the issue of financial inclusion comes in. That when you bring people on board, if you are requesting for somebody in my village now, in Delta State, to give you ID card, provide this, that there are other ways you can get information about that. For instance, if you go to a country like Gambia, they don't have good address system, but they have some landmarks that can be used. The same thing happens in Nigeria, that you can use such processes. So those are ways of simplifying the regime when it comes to CDD. And that is what will help in bringing on board so many people so that are not afraid of accessing that. But since also the emergence and the development of regulation by the central bank, and then bringing on board special regulation for microfinance, that is also a way of trying to over-regulation of that process, and therefore also cutting away some people that are supposed to be onboarded in that process. So this is also an issue that central bank need to look at, review their regulation, and see how these microfinance organizations can also simplify their processes to bring in more and more people into it. Today we are talking of small and medium scale micro enterprises. How do we bring them on board so that they can access financial services without overburdening them and then making the process look cumbersome? So all these are very, very key that we should look at.
Thank you so much. That's a fantastic response. Thank you so much, sir. I guess my next question is around, I know that you currently you do consulting, and so for me the question is, in your opinion, what are the key areas of AML CFT that you think some institutions need more guidance on? Are there particular capacity building efforts that you believe can make a tangible difference currently?
Yeah, one is on risk assessment. Many reporting entities, or what we call accountable institutions, are still struggling to look at the general principle of risk assessment, particularly when it comes to AML CFT issues. How do you narrow it down to money laundering related issues? How do you narrow it down to terrorist financing? And this is because they are lumping the general risk assessment framework and then deploying it like that. There are some specialized concepts that you need to gauge, and then the deployment of technology in doing that. You cannot use the manual approach. You need to also understand how technology can come in. And I'm glad that your organization is doing something in that area. I think that is an area you need to explore. Look at the overall risk assessment framework. The FATF and even JABA have come up with risk assessment guidance that can be used in developing the framework for organizations and for even countries. So this will help many organizations. They need to understand the risk associated with their businesses, and they need to update it and from time to time review it because of emerging money laundering risk. Today we are talking of issue of virtual assets. It has come to stay, and therefore there are some of them are the customers. The virtual asset service providers are customers of this financial institution. How do you also onboard them? And the Financial Action Task Force standard, FATF standard, has also made provision how to go about this. If you go to recommendation 15, there are about 8 different criteria on what the financial institutions and countries should do to be able to ensure that the virtual asset and virtual asset service providers are well onboarded and that they do not put risk to the operations of financial institutions and designated non-financial business and profession. So technology is key in undertaking risk assessment, and I hope you'll be able to look at it so that you can also exploit that opportunity and see how you can build what the current problem challenges we're having is that some of the framework or technology-driven processes are imported, and therefore they are not yet customized. They do not recognize our peculiarities. And that is also what is affecting us in our region in moving forward. That when you look at the FATF standard, we want to see what is happening in UK, forgetting that our own peculiarity is different from what is happening in UK. The way we organize our sectors are not the same, and therefore we have to adapt it to our own situations here. And that is the same thing with respect to technology.
You mentioned something about virtual assets service providers, and it's a point that I
Yes,
wanted to
virtual
kind
asset
of.
and virtual asset service providers.
Yes, sir. So it's one of the things
Yes,
I mean for because it's a hot topic now. It's a
yes,
very hot
yes.
topic now, and I think I mean, if you look back in, I think you said 1st of November 2000 was when you had your the first seminar session that you had. I'm sure 24 years ago you wouldn't have imagined that we would be talking about regulation of
Virtual
digital
assets.
assets and the like.
Exactly.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, so a lot of things have changed, and apart from that, you're looking at, I mean, this world of AI, there's so many things changing. So, in
Exactly.
your opinion, sir, those kinds of trends,
Yes.
do you think there are things that will shape the future of the compliance landscape, not just in Nigeria, but Africa and globally? And what advice would you give compliance leaders? And I mean, I know you've already mentioned things around like risk assessment, but more directly, what advice would you give compliance leaders, whether they're in regulated entities or competent authorities? How can they gear up for these types of challenges that was these new age challenges around digital assets and AI and the like? What kind of advice would you give leaders based on the future of AML CFT in this new world that we find ourselves in?
Okay. Thank you very much. As far back as 1962, an economist known as Milton Friedman has already predicted that very soon that we will not even need central bank as a regulator of the financial system. That transactions can be done between you and I without going through a particular centralized process. And that has what has emerged in the last few years, that people are now engaging without physical cash and so on, which brings on board the issue of virtual assets. And then
Yes, sir.
the providers of these services, that is the virtual asset service providers. And so it has come to stay. And with the emerging technology, every young African, Nigerians in particular, it may interest you to know that Nigeria is the first uh, country in Africa with the highest interest in virtual assets. From the statistics by chain analysis uh, since the last 2 years, Nigeria is topping the list of African countries with the highest number of people. In fact, in West Africa, about 15 million users were identified, and 12 million came from Nigeria. So
Wow.
that shows you that it has come to stay, and therefore, the first thing we must do, which was also a problem in the Nigerian mutual evaluation, that their national risk assessment (NRA) that was done in 2015-2016 did not capture the risk associated with virtual asset. Luckily, in 2022, there was a revised national risk assessment. I think that has addressed that gap that we needed to do that. So we have to review the operation of this. I'm glad about 3 weeks ago there was a summit by SEC, and the focus on virtual asset and virtual asset service provider. I was the keynote speaker in that, and it was to bring people to understand what is virtual asset, what are the obligations when it comes to virtual asset. There is already recommendation 15 by FATF that deals with issue of virtual asset. So we need to look at how far have we understood the requirements of that regulation to be able to know whether we are there. There are so many things we need to know about that regulation in terms of the risk assessment and application of risk-based approach, the licensing and registration issues associated, identification of the unlicensed virtual asset service providers. How do we treat them? Then those themselves, are they, or they have the required knowledge to be able to regulate that sector? So I will tell you that the sector is moving faster. The operators are moving faster than the regulator. That means the regulator need to learn from them. So collaboration is very key. Engage these people. What are you doing actually? They'll be able to expose the operation to you. Then you from there you learn. So this is very, very key. And then by the time you do that, if you supervise, you should now be able to come up with appropriate sanctions that will be effective, that will be decisive, and will be proportionate. And then you look at the overall preventive measures, particularly the CDD. What kind of thresholds should reporting entities undertake? It has been determined that no virtual asset service provider should undertake any transfer that is above 1,000 US dollars or 1,000 euro without doing certain things. And that brings also what we call the travel rule. What kind of information do we require from the beneficiary and from the originator? All this requires the knowledge building of and the operators. And then because this service is virtual, it cuts across borders, across boundaries. So international cooperation is very key. Today we are talking of issue of terrorism. One of the funding sources of terrorism is through virtual assets. And therefore, we have what we call targeted financial sanctions. Those people that have been designated as terrorists or terrorist organizations, how are we monitoring them to see that they are not using these processes to also fund their operations? So all these are areas that we need to build capacity in and then deploy regulations that are adaptable to our environment.
Thank you so much, sir. I feel like I'm just learning so much. It's really invigorating the thought process and the way you're communicating these ideas. And for me, it's interesting because you've been in this space for such a very long time, and it almost seems like you started yesterday with the energy that you have about the space. So my question to you, sir, is what are the issues what keeps you motivated after so many years of experience? Because some people will say, you've made your mark, you've done your part, you can enjoy your retirement, but I'm sure you're enjoying your retirement, but you are still doing the work and still so what keeps you motivated in this space, and how do you
And
see your
it's,
work contributing
yeah.
to the fight, sir?
In fact, if I had known, I would have maybe retired 10 years ago because I'm even making more money now than when I was a director in Java. But
Yeah.
just by the wayside, you see,
Yes, sir.
the issue of criminality has come to stay. You cannot eliminate money laundering. You cannot eliminate, that is, wipe it out because the human mind will continue to think about criminality. And right from creation, it has been so. All we need to do is how do we reduce it? How do we minimize it so that it will not have that deleterious impact on us? That our roads are bad today is because of corruption. How do we reduce corruption in our society in Nigeria? Today, I can tell you that one of the issues is issue of leadership recruitment. How do you, when you talk of leadership recruitment, it's not only the presidency, at institutional level, at even when you say institution, including religious leaders. We have statistics that has shown that religious leaders are also contributing to money laundering.
Oh,
So how do you also ensure? So that is an area, issue of good governance. And then you talk of issue of the legal framework. And then that is where we are now talking of issue of human rights, issue of making the law to take its course. So all these are things we should look at. So I get motivated because every day you see things evolving. The criminals are not sleeping. And the criminals are always ahead because we cannot know what the criminals are thinking. Unfortunately, they are the ones that are the first to even read the mutual evaluation of countries. When the mutual evaluation of Nigeria was adopted in August 2021, I tell you that the criminals already have access to that document and immediately saw the gap. They will be able to determine which one can we close up easily. That Nigeria, based on their legal processes, that you have to go through the National Assembly to be able to get laws, and may take 1 year. And within this 1 year, the criminals can operate and get away with it. Do you get it?
yes,
So
sir.
these are things we need to do in our country. How do we reduce the time frame of coming up with some regulations, other enforceable means that can help us to ensure that we're able to match the speed within which criminals. Today we are talking of AI. Have we also developed countermeasures to ensure that we're able to minimize the risk associated with the use of AI? These are things we need to look at. So you see that these things are evolving, and as they are evolving, we are also needed to provide our own knowledge in this area. So that is what motivates me. And
Thank you.
I have Nigeria that I'm also supporting the NFIU in the ICRG process, and I feel excited that we have people in Nigeria that want to make the country to move forward, and I believe in that cause, and I get uh, happy when I get involved in that.
Thank you so much, sir. And if I may, I want to thank you so much for the work that you've done and you continue to do in the space. We need people like you, leaders like you, that can guide the people in the right places, but also give mentorship to a number of people coming up, whether that's in the reporting entities or in the competent authorities. So I know that we've taken a lot of your time, sir. But if I may, just one final question: if you have any final words, is there anything that from your position that you think you'd like to share with the audience, that you anything that you'd like to share, sir, just before we wrap
Yeah.
up?
Okay, thank you very much. You see, Nigeria, for example, as a country, is a well respected country globally. But unfortunately, we have not taken our position globally. Today, Nigeria is not a member of the FATF. The only country in the entire Africa that is a direct member of the FATF is South Africa. And the fact South Africa actually got it on platter of gold. That position was offered to Nigeria around 99, 96, 97. The then military government did not understand the implication. and therefore they didn't take the offer. So South Africa took it. And I will tell you that since February 2010, that is about by coming February it will be how many years? 15 years. That Nigeria now
15
made a
years.
formal application to become a member of the FATF. And we have not gone through the first stage of the membership process because of the way we have positioned ourselves. The reason why I'm saying this is that if we position ourselves and become a member of the FATF, some of the recommendations that come on board, Nigeria will be able to challenge some of the issues they raise and say, no, this cannot work in our environment. This is how things operate in our environment. Therefore, let us do this and adapt it to our own environment. But today, we have no voice, and therefore they can impose on us any standard, and then we now begin to run up and down. I don't know whether I'm getting it. So it is very important that Nigeria works hard to become a direct member of the FATF. JABA is an FSRB, that is the Fatal Star Regional Body, but it does not represent fully the interests of a country. When a country is a full member of the FATF, you'll be able to challenge some decisions because decisions there are taken by consensus and not just by majority. Until a country decides to say, okay, I agree, before they can take that. So if Nigeria is a member, that will help us a lot. And I hope that we'll be able to work towards that. And the moment we exit the ICRG process, that is the grade list process, I think Nigeria should begin to work towards the membership process of the FATF and actualize it before other countries. Because I must tell you that within our region, countries like Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, and Ghana are already working hard to become members. And once they become members, it will become more difficult for us that is supposed to be the giant. We are supposed to be the pace setter, and others should follow. But if we don't take our place, then it becomes difficult for us to be able to show what we did. And then finally, let us also be able to assemble documents on time when evaluation is coming up. So that means assemble a very good team, internal team, to be able to face the assessors and make the assessors know that we are knowledgeable enough. And that means we have to also undertake training in that mutual evaluation process to have very good understanding of the process and what is required so that we don't suffer from overload of information that may be useless at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This has been very, very eye-opening. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I hope that is a conversation that we can have again and continue the conversation. And I hope that, and I know that the audience and the listeners, they will get a lot of value from it. I'm sure that a few people might also reach out to you to try to tap directly from your knowledge and collaborate with you. So thank you so much, Dr. Nduka. We do appreciate you and the work that you've done and you're continuing to do in the space. It's been a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tunde.